Have you ever found yourself standing in the middle of a brightly lit car dealership? You know the smell. That mix of fresh rubber and polishing compound.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very distinct atmosphere.
Right. Or maybe you're just sitting on your couch scrolling through some automotive website late at night and you look at the price tags of the newest electric vehicles and you just sigh.
Because the numbers are staggering.
They really are. It is a deeply frustrating feeling that I think so many of us, our listener included, know all too well right now. We watch this electric vehicle landscape shift and evolve at what feels like absolute light speed.
It really does feel like light speed lately. Every single month, the technology gets demonstrably better.
Exactly. The battery ranges get longer, the charging curves get flatter, the central infotainment screens get bigger and brighter. But for the longest time, the fundamental barrier to
The
entry,
sticker price.
yes, that absolute uncompromising hurdle of the sticker price has remained stubbornly, prohibitively high. I mean, the EV transition is felt in a lot of ways like an exclusive club with a velvet rope.
That's a great way to put it, a velvet rope.
You want to do the right thing, you want to embrace the future of mobility, but the cost of admission is it's staggering. You look at these family SUVs pushing 40, 50, even 60,000 pounds, and you have to wonder, how is the average person supposed to make this leap?
It is a very real, very heavy barrier for the average consumer, and really it's the defining tension of the modern automotive era. We're going to take our time going through this today because if you look at the broader economic context, we have spent the last decade watching the global automotive industry pour literally hundreds of billions of dollars into research, development, and entirely new supply chains.
Huge investments.
Right. But the initial fruits of that massive labor have predominantly been luxury vehicles, or at the very least, premium price models intended for high income earners.
Because they had to recoup those costs somehow, right?
Yeah. Exactly. The underlying rationale was that this nascent technology had to be paid for, and the early adopters, the people with the disposable income to absorb the premium, they bore that initial cost. But now we are arriving at a fascinating, highly disruptive inflection point. Let's take this slowly, because the conversation within the boardrooms is shifting rapidly.
Shifting away from what?
From look at this incredible, unattainable technology to a much more urgent, how do we get this technology into every single driveway on Earth before our competitors do?
And that question is exactly why we are here with you today. Welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is highly specific, and to accomplish it, we have gathered a truly diverse global stack of recent automotive sources.
We really want to give you, the listener, the complete 360-degree view.
We do. So we are taking our time to look at in-depth market analyses from UK tech and automotive magazines like EV Powered and The Independent. We are cross-referencing that with perspectives from Italian auto portals like Notiziato.
Getting that crucial continental European angle.
Right. And we are even pulling in detailed reports and pricing projections from Indian EV blogs like EVFY. That gives us a really important perspective on emerging global markets. So we are taking all of this disparate global data to decode one specific massive phenomenon taking over the industry.
The rapid, almost unbelievable expansion of MG Motors.
Specifically, we are going to zoom in and spend our time meticulously unpacking two completely opposite ends of their upcoming lineup. We have the MG2 city car, aimed at the absolute masses, and the radical, rule-breaking CyberX SUV, designed for a totally different demographic. Okay, let's unpack this.
To truly grasp the magnitude of what the data is showing us today, we need to take a deliberate step back and examine the context. We have a vast amount of ground to cover.
From battery chemistry to platform engineering.
Right, all the way to global market economics and consumer psychology. But to understand the trajectory of MG Motors, you cannot simply look at the cars they are releasing tomorrow. You have to understand the profound corporate metamorphosis they have undergone. I want to emphasize this slowly. This is not a story of a brand simply updating its logo.
No, it's not.
It is a story of total systemic evolution.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people listening right now, the letters MG carry a very specific, almost nostalgic weight. I mean, think back to what that badge used to represent.
Wire wheels in British racing green.
Exactly. For decades, throughout the mid to late 20th century, MG was entirely synonymous with classic, lightweight, frankly slightly unreliable British sports cars. You picture the MGB, the wind in your hair, a tweed cap, oil leaking onto a driveway somewhere in the Cotswolds.
It was a very specific type of analog romance.
It really was. But the MG we are looking at in these sources today, it couldn't be further from that reality. MG has been completely transformed into a Chinese-owned electric powerhouse, operating under the massive corporate umbrella of SAI. And the sheer speed of their current product rollout is what's catching everyone off guard.
The speed is, without question, the most critical element of their strategy, and it's something legacy automakers are genuinely struggling to comprehend, let alone match. When we say SAI, the Shanghai Automotive Industry Corporation, we need to clearly establish what that actually means.
We're not talking about a scrappy startup in a garage.
Not at all. SAI is one of the largest automotive manufacturing conglomerates on the planet. They possess immense economies of scale, deep integration into global battery supply chains, vast capital resources.
So they didn't just buy a name.
No. When SAI acquired the MG brand, they bought a Trojan horse for the European and global markets. They took a familiar, trusted Western badge and grafted it onto a state-of-the-art, high-velocity Chinese manufacturing engine.
And that high-velocity engine is exactly what's playing out right now. Just look at the timeline our sources have mapped out. For a significant portion of 2025, if you walked into an MG dealership in a key market like the UK, they were primarily relying on just two main electric models.
Just two.
You had the mainstream MG4 hatchback doing the heavy lifting for the everyday buyer, and at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you had the premium Cyberster Roadster, that low-slung scissor-door sports car acting as a halo product. Just two distinct offerings bearing the weight of their electric transition.
But look at what happens next.
Right. If you look at the market briefings detailed by EV Powered, the projection for the middle of 2026 is staggering. By mid-2026, which is practically tomorrow in traditional automotive terms, they are projected to have 8 distinct all-electric models on sale in the UK market.
Going from 2 models to 8 in such a compressed time frame.
Isn't that a logistical nightmare? I mean, how do you even manage a supply chain for an expansion like that?
It requires a monumental logistical and engineering effort, one that is virtually impossible for a legacy automaker bound by traditional development cycles. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a traditional European or American automaker typically takes 4 to 7 years to develop a single new vehicle from a blank sheet of paper to the showroom floor.
Because they have so much institutional inertia.
Precisely. They have existing internal combustion engine platforms that they are trying to milk for every last drop of profit. They have complex union negotiations, sprawling legacy supply chains dedicated to spark plugs and exhaust manifolds, and a corporate culture that is inherently risk-averse.
Whereas MG,
backed by SAI, operates with a clean slate. They are utilizing modular, EV-only architectures that can be stretched, widened, and adapted for multiple vehicles simultaneously.
let's actually walk through this incoming roster slowly, because when you list them all out, the scale of this invasion, and invasion really feels like the right word here, becomes incredibly clear. First, you have what sources define as the mainstream lineup.
The bread and butter.
Exactly. You have the original MG4, which has already been highly successful, but now they are introducing the newly launched MG4 Urban, which, if I'm being honest, seems a bit confusing right out of the gate.
Yeah, so.
Because the sources note the MG4 Urban is actually larger than the original MG4. It starts at 23,495 pounds, which translates to roughly 27,000 euros, but that's just the baseline. On top of that, they're bringing in the MGS5 and the MG6S. That completely blankets the everyday family buyer segment.
It does, and they don't stop there. Once they have secured the mass market, they are moving up market. The sources detail a premium lineup featuring the IM5 Saloon and the IM6 SUV.
IM stands for Intelligent Mobility, right?
Yes, intelligent mobility. These vehicles are designed to compete directly with the likes of Tesla and premium German brands. They focus on advanced autonomous driving features, luxury interiors, and high-performance dual-motor setups.
So they have the mainstream, they have the premium.
And finally, you have the performance halo models. The Cyberster Roadster, which is already establishing a completely new identity for the brand, will be joined by the incoming Cyberster GTS Coupe. That provides a hardtop alternative for driving enthusiasts.
It's an absolute flood of vehicles. But I have to ask why? Why transition from a relatively focused two-car niche offering to a massive full-spectrum catalog so quickly? Doesn't that risk confusing the consumer?
It's a fair question.
You walk into a dealership, and suddenly there are 8 different cars with slightly overlapping names.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a slower, more deliberate rollout build stronger brand loyalty?
That is a very traditional way of looking at brand management, and it's the exact mindset SAI is exploiting. They are executing what military strategists call a flood the zone approach.
Flood the zone.
Yes. The risk of confusing the consumer is vastly outweighed by the strategic imperative of capturing market share before the window of opportunity closes. Let's think about this slowly. The legacy European automakers are currently in a highly vulnerable transitional phase.
They are slowly winding down their combustion engines and slowly ramping up their EVs.
Exactly. MG recognizes this momentary weakness. Their goal is to ensure that no matter who you are, what your budget is, what your family size is, or what your aesthetic preference is, you can walk into an MG dealership and find an electric option specifically tailored for you available right now. While the European brands are still asking you to join a waiting list.
They want to be the default answer to every single automotive question.
Precisely.
Okay, so they are throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, and they have the financial backing to do it. But out of all those 8 models, there is one car that is generating a disproportionate amount of buzz across every single source we pulled. It's the absolute star of our deep dive today. And fascinatingly, it's a car that isn't even fully revealed to the public yet.
Highly anticipated MG2.
According to the timelines in our sources, this car is expected to be officially unveiled in the second half of 2026, with a global launch hitting showrooms in 2027.
The MG2 is arguably the most important car in their entire global strategy, and its positioning within that massive 8-car lineup is vital to understand. The MG2 will sit directly below the MG4 and the newly introduced MG4 Urban. It is taking on the heavy responsibility of being the brand's absolute entry-level electric vehicle.
To be specific, the sources classify it as a true B-segment hatchback.
Let's clarify what B-segment means for you listening. Especially if you aren't steeped in European automotive classifications. We aren't talking about a midsize sedan or a crossover.
No, a B-segment car is a super mini.
Right. The defining characteristic is that it will be under 4 meters in length. Think of the Ford Fiesta, the Volkswagen Polo, or the Renault Clio.
These are the cars that actually make European and Asian cities function. They're highly compact, exceptionally agile, and designed to squeeze into impossibly tight parallel parking spots on narrow cobblestone streets.
But what makes the MG2 so fascinating isn't just its size, it's the price tag attached to it.
And this is where we really need to slow down and look at the numbers. The pricing is the epicenter of this entire disruption. Across all the international sources we analyzed, whether it's the UK projections, the Italian market analyses, or the Indian blogs, they are all converging on a very specific target figure.
A figure that changes the entire conversation.
The sources are pointing to a target price for the MG2 of around £20,000. Depending on the fluctuating exchange rate, that lands roughly between 20,000 and 25,000 euros for the European market. And as the Indian EV blog EVFY specifically notes, that translates to about 24.5 lakh.
Let's just sit with that number for a second, £20,000.
We just talked about how the average new EV sits comfortably above 40 or 50,000 pounds. Even a basic internal combustion engine Volkswagen Golf can easily push past 30,000 pounds today.
It's astronomical.
If they can genuinely deliver a fully electric, modern car at 20,000 pounds, that doesn't just lower the barrier to entry, it completely obliterates it. It brings an entirely new demographic, younger buyers, lower-income families, people who have been totally priced out of the green revolution right into the showrooms.
It is a genuinely revolutionary price point for the current era, but as analysts, we must look very carefully at the specific rhetoric MG is deploying around this number. There is a fascinating quote in our sources from David Allison. He serves as the head of product and planning for MG Motor UK.
What does he say?
When discussing the 20,000-pound target, he and the corporate communications team are being incredibly careful to deliberately avoid the term low cost.
But wait, 20,000 pounds for a new EV is objectively low cost. Why would they run away from that term? If you have the cheapest product on the market, shouldn't you shout that from the rooftops?
Because in automotive marketing, the word cheap is toxic. Allison is instead positioning the MG2 as a strong value-for-money proposition.
Ah, value versus cheap.
Exactly. There is a profound psychological distinction between selling a consumer something cheap and selling them value. A cheap car implies painful compromises. It suggests to the buyer that they are settling for flimsy interior plastics, poor sound insulation, outdated safety features, and terrible driving dynamics simply because they cannot afford anything better.
Nobody wants to feel like they're driving a penalty box.
Precisely. A value proposition, however, flatters the consumer. It implies that you are a savvy, intelligent buyer who has found a loophole in the market. It tells the consumer that they are getting significantly more car, more technology, and more refinement than they actually paid for.
It's a completely different emotional pitch.
MG knows that to succeed in Europe, they cannot afford the stigma of being the bargain basement option. They must be perceived as the smart choice.
That psychological distinction really shines through when you look at how the actual designers of the car are talking about it. Because you can't build an emotional connection with a spreadsheet, right? You need a narrative. Joseph Caban is MG's global design vice president, and his quotes featured in The Independent are incredibly revealing.
He doesn't talk about cost savings or supply chain efficiencies.
No, he doesn't. He refers to the upcoming MG2 as, like, the cute baby in the family. He promises the listener that the design will make you smile. And I found this line particularly charming. He says that the parents are already a little bit proud of what they are developing. It completely humanizes a cold industrial engineering process.
Caban's background adds substantial weight and context to those emotional statements. He is not a lifelong MG company man. He joined the brand relatively recently. Interestingly, he publicly credits his own circle of friends, many of whom are longtime MG owners, with helping him truly understand the brand's historical ethos and emotional resonance.
That's fascinating.
He even noted that one of his friends went out and bought the new Cyberster Roadster right after Caban joined the company. This personal, immediate connection to the consumer base seems to be driving his entire design philosophy for the MG2. He understands inherently that a small B-segment city car cannot just be a sterile, functional appliance.
Like a washing machine.
Right. If you want people to buy it, especially in a competitive market, it has to have personality. It has to evoke an emotional response when you walk up to it in a parking lot.
And a massive part of cultivating that specific personality comes down to exactly where the car is being drawn. Obviously, MG is completely Chinese-owned, and they possess a colossal, highly advanced design and engineering studio in Shanghai. But the sources go out of their way to emphasize the critical role of MG's London Marylebone Design Center in the creation of the MG2.
The Marylebone Studio.
Yeah. Caban notes that this UK-based team is full of young, hungry designers. But why split the design work? If you were building the car in China to keep costs down, why pay expensive London rents for a design studio?
Because you cannot synthesize cultural heritage through a global focus group. It is a highly deliberate, delicate balancing act of global resources. Let's unpack the strategy. SAI is utilizing the immense, terrifying scale and speed of their parent facilities in Shanghai for the underlying hard engineering.
The battery chemistry, the crash structures, the software architecture.
Exactly, that keeps the costs low. But they are relying on the Marylebone studio to tailor the aesthetic skin and the emotional appeal specifically for the Western market. By having young designers in London sketch the car, they are trying to ensure the MG2 doesn't look like a generic, scaled-down, anonymous global EV.
They want it to feel British.
They want to imbue it with a bit of authentic British heritage, a specific character that resonates instantly with a European buyer who might be skeptical of a purely Chinese import. It is the synthesis of Eastern efficiency and Western emotional design.
Okay, so the car has to look good and feel British. But ultimately, you can't build a 20,000-pound electric vehicle, no matter how cute it is, without some incredibly smart, ruthlessly efficient technical foundations. Let's look under the sheet metal.
The engineering breakdown.
Yes, specifically the deep dive from Noticiato. It gives us a surprisingly clear, granular picture of the architecture supporting this car.
To understand how they hit that price point, we have to look at the platform itself. The sources identify this as the E3 architecture. This is a modular platform, meaning it's essentially a highly adaptable skateboard that can serve as the foundation for multiple different vehicles. In fact, it is the exact same underlying platform that underpins the larger, more expensive MG4 Urban.
But adapted for a smaller footprint.
Yes. Now, breaking down the mechanical realities of the E3 platform as applied to the MG2, it will feature a front-wheel drive layout.
Let me stop you right there, because for a lot of EV enthusiasts, front-wheel drive is almost seen as a step backward. A lot of the lauded, fun-to-drive EVs out there, including the original MG4, use rear-wheel drive. So why go with front-wheel drive for the MG2? Is that just a compromise?
It is a calculated engineering choice driven purely by economics and packaging efficiency. Let's think about the mechanics. Rear-wheel drive, while it offers superior driving dynamics and acceleration off the line, is inherently more complex.
More parts.
Yes, it requires more wiring, more complex subframes, and it takes up valuable space in the rear of the vehicle, which encroaches on the boot capacity. Front-wheel drive is mechanically simpler. It clusters the motor, the inverter, and the cooling systems all into one compact unit at the front of the vehicle.
So it's easier to put together.
It uses fewer components, it takes less time to assemble on the factory line, and it is highly cost-effective. When your absolute overgrading mandate is hitting a 20,000-pound price target, you sacrifice the slightly sharper handling of rear-wheel drive for the undeniable manufacturing efficiency of front-wheel drive.
That makes perfect sense. And it isn't just where the motor goes. It is how the battery itself is integrated into that E3 skateboard platform. The sources specifically mention the use of cell-to-body technology.
Cell-to-body integration, yes.
To explain what this means to you listening, think about the evolution of mobile phones. Let's go back 15 years ago. You had your mobile phone casing, the plastic shell, and when you took the back off, there was a separate, bulky, heavy battery pack that you could pop in and out.
Right, the old bricks.
Exactly. But look at a modern premium smartphone today. You can't take the back off. The battery isn't a separate removable module. It is built seamlessly into the frame of the phone. The battery itself actually provides structural rigidity to the device. That is exactly what cell-to-body technology means for a car.
That is an excellent analogy, and it's crucial for understanding modern EV design.
Yeah.
Historically, in early EVs, the battery was essentially a massive, heavy aluminum vault bolted underneath the floor pan of the car. It was redundant weight.
Just dead weight you had to drag around.
Precisely. With cell-to-body integration, the battery cells are integrated directly into the chassis architecture. The top cover of the battery pack is literally the floor of the cabin that your feet rest on. This eliminates the redundant casing, which saves a significant amount of weight.
It makes the car stiffer.
Yes, it vastly increases the torsional rigidity of the car, making it safer in a crash and better to drive. But most crucially, for a B-segment city car, it maximizes cabin space.
Because space is everything in a super mini.
When your vehicle is strictly constrained to under 4 meters in length, every single millimeter of interior volume is fiercely contested real estate. By lowering the floor through cell-to-body integration, they can give passengers acceptable headroom and comfortable ergonomics without having to make the car awkwardly tall or aerodynamically inefficient.
That's fascinating. You are literally sitting on the battery cells.
Yeah.
So let's transition to the actual capacity of those cells. Because when you dig into the sources, the media reports offer slightly conflicting numbers, and we need to synthesize what's actually happening here.
The battery specs.
Right. The MG2 is expected to borrow its battery packs directly from the larger MG4 Urban. Now, some of the broader sources, like EV Powered, round the battery sizes to 43 kilowatt-hours and 54 kilowatt-hours. But the Italian source, Note as the Auto, cross-referenced with the Indian blog EVFY, points to much more precise, granular engineering figures.
41.9 and 52.8.
Yes, exactly.
This discrepancy is a classic example of automotive reporting dynamics. Marketing departments and consumer magazines often round figures up for simplicity and better headline impact, stating the gross capacity of the battery. However, the technical specifications, the 41.9 and 52.8 figures, likely represent the actual usable capacity.
Because you can't use the whole battery.
Right.
Yeah.
You never want to run a lithium-ion battery completely to zero or charge it to an absolute 100% as it degrades the chemistry. But regardless of the slight rounding variance, what is explicitly clear is that MG will offer 2 distinct battery tiers to cater to different budget levels.
To hit different price points.
Exactly. And to contextualize those numbers, 52.8 kilowatt-hours is a substantial amount of energy. It is roughly equivalent to the total electricity an average household might consume over the course of 4 to 5 days. Packing that much energy into a chassis smaller than a Super Mini is a testament to the density of modern battery chemistry.
And those 2 battery tiers translate directly into the single most important metric for any EV buyer. Range.
Range is everything for consumer confidence.
It is. The larger MG4 Urban, equipped with that bigger battery, achieves up to 258 miles of range on a single charge. However, the MG2 is physically smaller, it is lighter, and has less aerodynamic drag. Because of those efficiencies, the sources estimate the MG2's range will start around 220 miles for the smaller, entry-level battery.
And stretch all the way up to roughly 280 miles for the larger pack.
Which is about 320 kilometers. Now, as for the motor driving the wheels, the MG4 Urban utilizes a robust 201 brake horsepower motor. But David Allison strongly hinted that the MG2 might feature toned-down technical specifications. I have to assume that means a less powerful motor, right?
Without a doubt. And again, this is a highly pragmatic engineering decision. A lightweight B-segment city car simply does not require 201 horsepower.
It would be overkill.
Complete overkill. That much power in a small front-wheel drive car would likely just result in wheel spin and wasted energy. A motor producing perhaps 130 to 150 horsepower is more than sufficient.
It still feels quick.
Yes, it makes a small car feel incredibly agile, punchy, and responsive in stop-and-go urban traffic, while significantly reducing the manufacturing cost and extending the battery range.
But let's talk about that range estimate for a moment. 220 to 280 miles.
Mhm.
And I want to push back on this a little bit. We are bombarded daily by advertisements from luxury automakers boasting about EVs that could do 350, 400, even 450 miles on a single charge.
The range war.
Right. If I'm a consumer reading those ads, doesn't 220 miles feel like a massive compromise? Doesn't that trigger the dreaded range anxiety?
This is where we have to separate consumer psychology from the harsh physics of battery technology. Consumers have been conditioned by the internal combustion era to expect a 400-mile range from a tank of petrol, and they map that expectation directly onto EVs. But there is a very specific, undeniable logic to targeting 220 to 280 miles for a city commuter.
It's the sweet spot.
It is the absolute sweet spot. Why? Because of the weight penalty. Let's slow down and think about this. Batteries are incredibly heavy. If you engineer a tiny MG2 to house a massive battery capable of 400 miles, the car becomes obscenely heavy. That excess weight ruins the handling. It degrades the efficiency because you are using energy just to haul around dead lithium. And most critically, it drastically drives up the cost of the vehicle, utterly destroying your 20,000-pound value proposition.
So you are paying for capacity you aren't using.
Exactly. You are carrying around a massive, expensive battery for no daily benefit. Conversely, if you only give the car 100 miles of range to save money, the consumer experiences severe daily range anxiety, even if their actual daily commute is only 15 miles.
Because they worry about the unexpected.
Yes, the 220 to 280 mile bracket is the exact pragmatic equilibrium. It keeps the weight and cost manageable, ensuring the car remains affordable and efficient, while providing a large enough buffer that the average urban driver only needs to plug the car in once a week.
That makes a lot of sense.
It effectively eliminates the daily psychological stress of range anxiety without demanding the consumer pay a premium for a massive battery they might only fully utilize once a year on a cross-country road trip.
You are buying the car for the 360 days a year you commute, not the 5 days a year you drive to a different country. Okay, so we've established the foundation, the platform, the battery, the efficiency. Now let's move out from under the hood and look at where you, the actual driver, will be spending your time.
The cabin.
The cabin experience. Because again, when you hear the phrase 20,000-pound entry-level car, your brain immediately expects a deeply Spartan basic interior. You expect hard plastics, maybe a tiny monochrome radio, and a distinct lack of comfort.
The traditional budget car experience.
Right. But the sources suggest MG is taking a radically different route, borrowing heavily from the modernized, tech-forward cabin of the MG4 Urban.
The interior specifications detailed in the reports are perhaps the most revealing aspect of MG's strategy to deliver true value over simple cheapness. We are anticipating a fully digital, highly modern environment that directly mimics vehicles costing twice as much.
What are we looking at specifically?
The primary interface for the driver will be a massive 12.8-inch central touchscreen that will handle navigation, media, and deeper vehicle settings. This is complemented by a secondary 7-inch digital driver display positioned directly behind the steering wheel. That provides critical, immediate driving data like speed and battery life at a glance.
And this is where the sources reveal something that, frankly, makes me want to applaud MG's engineering team. Alongside those massive high-tech digital screens, the reports specifically highlight the inclusion of physical climate controls.
Physical buttons are making a comeback.
They are. And not just the climate controls, but an updated steering wheel featuring tactile physical buttons.
Yeah.
Now, if you haven't been in a brand new EV recently, that might sound like a completely mundane detail.
But it's actually huge.
It is massive. If you have driven some of the recent vehicles from certain tech-obsessed brands, where absolutely everything, even adjusting the air conditioning, turning on the windshield wipers, or opening the glove box, is buried 3 menus deep in a glossy touchscreen, you know how incredibly frustrating and potentially dangerous that is while driving. Bringing back physical tactile buttons for core functions isn't a step backward. It's a massive win for ergonomics and usability.
It is a remarkable, necessary pivot away from a deeply flawed industry trend. The automotive industry became infatuated with massive touchscreens because, frankly, deleting physical buttons and replacing them with software code saves money on the assembly line.
It's cheaper to just code a button on a screen.
Exactly. But consumer backlash has been severe. People want to be able to turn down the heat without taking their eyes off the road. MG is demonstrating that they are actively listening to that frustration. But beyond the buttons themselves, let's consider the broader market implication of this cabin design.
Okay, what does this do to the market?
Bringing a premium digital experience, a near 13-inch screen, crisp digital clusters, tactile, well-designed controls, into a 20,000-pound vehicle fundamentally disrupts the traditional automotive hierarchy.
How so? Because cheap cars always had cheap interiors, right?
Exactly. Historically, the rule was simple and strictly enforced by legacy automakers. Cheap cars get cheap interiors. If you wanted the nice screens and the soft-touch materials, you were forced to buy the more expensive model. MG is attempting to democratize the premium digital experience.
They're raising the baseline.
Yes. If a consumer realizes they can get a highly advanced, comfortable, and tech-forward interior for £20,000, they will permanently adjust their expectations. They will start demanding that level of standard equipment across the entire market.
Which puts the legacy brands in a tough spot.
It forces legacy automakers into a corner. They will have to heavily subsidize the cost of their own entry-level interiors just to compete, eating directly into their already slim profit margins.
And believe me, those legacy automakers are going to have to fight for every single inch of market share, because this deep dive wouldn't be complete without looking at the massive impending industry clash that is brewing for 2026 and 2027. The MG2 is absolutely not launching into a vacuum.
No, it is entering a very crowded space.
It is entering what is shaping up to be the ultimate super mini battlefield. Every brand has looked at this B segment and realized it is the key to mass adoption.
This raises an important question about market dynamics. The B-segment electric vehicle market is about to transition from a relatively quiet niche into the most fiercely contested, highest volume space in the global automotive industry. As battery prices finally dip to a level that makes small cars economically viable to produce, every single major manufacturer is rushing to stake their claim.
It's a gold rush.
The sheer volume of rivals identified across our sources is staggering. Let's slowly outline who they are up against.
I want to walk you through this list because it shows just how varied the strategies are.
Yeah.
I like to categorize them to make sense of the chaos. First, you have what I would call the retro revivals.
The nostalgic approach.
Right, these are brands looking at the EV transition and deciding to lean heavily into nostalgia to sell their new tech. You have the highly anticipated Renault 5 and the upcoming Renault Twingo E-Tech. They are taking classic, beloved designs from the 70s and 80s, modernizing them, and using that familiar emotional connection to make the intimidating leap to electric power feel safe and fun.
It's a very smart emotional play.
Then you have the Euro stalwarts. These are the established players desperately trying to defend their home turf against new arrivals. We were looking at the Citroën EC3, which is aiming for aggressive affordability. You have the Volkswagen ID.1, or perhaps what we call the ID Polo, leveraging massive brand trust.
Yeah.
And you have the sporty Cupra Raval from Spain, aimed at the younger enthusiast. But that's just Europe.
The list continues globally, and the threat from Asia is profound. We must factor in the Asian contenders. Nissan, a pioneer in the EV space with the original Leaf, is bringing an all-electric version of the Micra.
And then there's BYD.
Yes, BYD, the massive Chinese conglomerate that frequently trades places with Tesla as the world's largest EV manufacturer. They are launching the Dolphin Surf. Hyundai is preparing the highly stylized Inster, and Kia has the EV2 in the pipeline.
And finally, you have a distinct category we can call the budget warriors.
Vehicles that are stripping absolutely everything back to the bare minimum.
Right, to compete purely on the lowest possible price. The Dacia Spring is the prime example of this, alongside the Leapmotor TO3. These cars make compromises on range, power, and interior quality to hit rock-bottom prices.
So if we look at this battlefield,
We have a total traffic jam of new models. You have retro charm, you have legacy trust, you have massive Chinese scale, and you've stripped out budget options. If I am the consumer, I am absolutely paralyzed by choice. And if I'm MG, I have to be terrified. How does a brand like MG, which lacks the deep nostalgic love of a Renault 5 and isn't aiming for the absolute bare-bones price of a Dacia Spring, actually stand out in a field this incredibly crowded? Why would someone choose the MG2 over an electric VW Polo?
This raises an important question, and it is the defining question for MG's executive team. The answer lies in synthesizing the strategy we have discussed today. We need to return to that quote from David Allison. He described the 20,000-pound mark as an unmissable window of opportunity to combine range, size, and price into an irresistible offer.
An irresistible offer.
MG's strategy is not to win on singular extremes. They won't win a beauty contest against a retro Renault 5, and they won't win a race to the absolute bottom against a Dacia Spring. Their strategy is to offer the most perfectly balanced objective equation.
The ultimate middle ground.
They are attempting to build a car that looks modern and British-inspired enough to be desirable. It possesses the digital interior technology of a vehicle twice its price. It offers enough battery range to completely eliminate urban anxiety. And it hits that magic psychological 20,000-pound figure. They are betting that when the consumer sits down and actually does the math, the MG2 will win on pure, undeniable, objective value.
Okay, we have spent a significant amount of time down in the trenches of the entry-level market, deeply analyzing the tiny, hyper-efficient MG2 and the bloodbath of the B segment. But to truly understand MG's master plan, I want to drastically shift our focus now. Let's pivot to the absolute extreme opposite end of the spectrum.
The high end.
Because if MG only built sensible, budget-friendly super minis, they would be a very boring, low-margin company. But they are also developing something that seems completely out of character, the CyberX SUV.
The contrast between the MG2 and the CyberX is truly stark, and it is entirely intentional. While the MG2 is designed to generate massive sales volume, the CyberX is designed to generate massive profit margins and serve as a profound halo effect for the entire brand. It is about altering perception. The CyberX was unveiled as a concept vehicle at the 2025 Goodwood Festival of Speed.
And for those who might not follow UK car culture, we really need to explain what Goodwood is. The Goodwood Festival of Speed is not your average boring convention center auto show. It takes place on the pristine lawns of a massive British estate.
It is high society car culture.
Exactly. It is a celebration of high-end, high-octane, incredibly expensive, and highly exclusive automotive culture. You have vintage Ferraris, Formula One cars, and multi-million-pound hypercars roaring up a hill climb. Debuting a vehicle like Goodwood is a massive statement of intent. You are declaring that your car belongs among the elite.
And the CyberX is not a subtle car.
The sources describe the CyberX as a large, imposingly boxy SUV, roughly the footprint of a Land Rover Defender. It is aggressive, it is geometric, and it looks absolutely nothing like the cute, friendly, smiling MG2 we just spent 30 minutes discussing. Why debut a brutalist electric SUV at a heritage racing festival?
To shatter preconceptions, let's look at the reception at Goodwood as detailed in the sources. It is highly revealing. Joseph Caban recounted a fascinating anecdote. MG handed out physical comment cards to the attendees at the festival. These are wealthy, discerning car enthusiasts.
The toughest crowd possible.
Caban literally spent his evenings during the festival sitting down and reading through these cards. He expected skepticism, perhaps even hostility toward a Chinese-owned electric SUV at a traditional British festival. Instead, he found the cards were overwhelmingly enthusiastically positive. People reacting to the CyberX loved the audacity of it. It validated the massive, wild swing that MG is taking with their design language.
It's an incredible story, but it brings up a major strategic question. If you are a brand trying to build a cohesive identity, how do you sell the cute baby MG2 to a nurse looking for a cheap commute and simultaneously sell a brutal, aggressive CyberX to a wealthy enthusiast? Doesn't that cause massive brand schizophrenia?
If handled poorly, yes, it would. But Caban uses a brilliant, highly accessible culinary analogy to describe and justify MG's global market strategy. He talks about the absolute necessity of bringing both sweet and salty flavors to the global market.
Sweet and salty.
He recognizes that MG is not a boutique brand. They operate in over 100 distinct countries with wildly varying tastes. You cannot simply cook one flavor and expect it to satisfy the entire globe. The mainstream cars, the highly sensible MG4, the upcoming value-driven MG2, the practical family-friendly SUVs, those represent the sweet. They're universally appealing, they're easy to digest, they're safe, and they satisfy the massive volume demands of the mass market.
I see. So the Cyber sub-brand, which currently includes the low-slung scissor-door Cyberster Roadster, and now this massive, boxy CyberX SUV that represents the salty.
Exactly. The Cyber sub-brand is the salty element. It is unexpected. It is a little out of the traditional bounds. It is specifically, unapologetically designed for a consumer who would never even glance at a standard MG ZS SUV because they view it as too normal, too ubiquitous, or frankly, too boring.
They want to stand out.
This demographic wants something with a sharp edge. They want something that makes a radical, perhaps even polarizing statement when they pull up to a restaurant. By sequestering these vehicles into a dedicated cyber sub-brand, MG is allowed to play in the emotional, high-margin, highly expressive side of the luxury market without diluting or confusing the sensible, value-driven, accessible identity of their main lineup. It is a dual-track strategy.
It's brilliant. You keep the volume cars cheap, but you make the high-margin buyers feel like they are getting something bespoke and exclusive. And there is one more detail buried in the sources, specifically highlighted by the Italian portal Notiziato, that perfectly bridges the gap between the sweet everyday cars and the salty cybercars.
The XP line.
Yes, it's a rumor regarding something called the XP line. David Allison has actually acknowledged this project on the record. He described the XP line as a sporty EV sub-brand that would fit the company's ethos perfectly. What exactly is an XP line?
The XP line represents the synthesis of the two extremes. The crucial detail from the sources is that the XP line would not require the installation of extreme track-level performance motors or massive, heavy batteries. Instead, it would focus heavily on aggressive styling.
So it's an aesthetic upgrade.
Primarily, yes. Perhaps slightly lowered and sharpened suspension for better handling, and a distinctively sporty, premium aesthetic applied directly to their existing mainstream cars. Think of it as a middle ground. It is designed specifically for the consumer who desperately wants a bit of that aggressive, salty cyber flavor, but who is still constrained by a mainstream budget.
It's the best of both worlds for the buyer and highly profitable for MG.
Exactly. It allows MG to charge a premium for cosmetic and minor mechanical upgrades, significantly boosting the profit margin on a 20,000-pound car without having to engineer a completely new powertrain.
So if we pull all the way back, taking in everything we have discussed today, the metamorphosis from British roadsters to global SAIC powerhouse, the massive 8-car lineup, the 20,000-pound MG2 Super Mini with its cell-to-body tech and physical buttons, the bloodbath of the B-segment competitors, and the high-end emotional Cyber X and XP line. So what does this all mean? What is the ultimate takeaway for the listener trying to make sense of where the automotive industry is heading?
The ultimate synthesis of all this data is that MG, fully backed by the terrifying industrial might and capital of SAIC, is executing an absolute masterclass in global market penetration. They are not merely participating in the EV transition, they are actively attempting to dictate its terms.
They're rewriting the rules.
They are executing a classic pincer movement. On one flank, they are attacking the absolute entry level of the market with the MG2. A friendly, highly equipped, 20,000-pound, tech-forward city car explicitly designed to democratize electric driving and capture the mass consumer before legacy brands can react. At the precise same time, on the other flank, they are building a high-end, highly emotional, high-margin connection with automotive enthusiasts through the radical, salty designs of the Cyber sub-brand.
It's a total encirclement.
They are surrounding the slow-moving, legacy European and American automakers from both the bottom and the top simultaneously, leaving very little oxygen in the room for anyone else.
It is an incredibly aggressive, deeply fascinating strategy. And whether you love EVs or are still skeptical of them, it is going to be genuinely incredible to watch this play out on the roads in 2026 and 2027. The landscape of what we drive is changing forever. But as we wrap up this massive deep dive today, we want to leave you with one final lingering thought.
Something to ponder slowly.
Right. This is something outside of the direct facts of the sources, something to just chew on and mull over on your own time as you watch this transition unfold.
Consider the long-term macro implications of what we have discussed. If automakers like MG truly succeed in their ultimate mission, if they can genuinely manufacture highly complex, battery-dense, screen-filled, technologically advanced electric vehicles and successfully sell them as affordable 20,000-pound everyday commodities, what does that actually do to the global life cycle of the automobile?
It changes our relationship with cars entirely.
Historically, a car was a massive, decades-long investment. But if a highly capable EV becomes as relatively affordable and as fundamentally tech-dependent as our personal electronics, will human behavior shift? Will we begin to treat our cars the exact same way we treat our smartphones?
Upgrading them constantly.
Will we expect to simply trade them in and upgrade them every 3 to 4 years the moment the infotainment screen gets a little laggy or the battery degrades by a few percentage points? And if society does indeed shift to a world of highly disposable, easily replaceable, affordable city cars, the vital existential question becomes this. Is our global recycling infrastructure truly, honestly prepared to handle the incredible volume of millions upon millions of depleted, discarded, heavily integrated EV chassis entering the waste stream every single year?
That is a deeply complex, incredibly daunting reality that we will very soon have to face. That is a massive, heavy question, and it's one that regulators, engineers, and all of us as consumers will have to figure out together as this electric transition continues to accelerate. But for now, that brings us to the very end of today's deep dive. I want to take a moment to offer a very warm, very sincere thank you to you, our listener. We know there is an absolute ocean of endless content out there vying for your attention, and we are so incredibly grateful that you chose to spend your valuable time meticulously unpacking this dense, fascinating, and wildly important topic with us today. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.